Welcome to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where owners of privately held middle market companies talk about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses successfully. Learn how to maximize and monetize your business on your own terms. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Heather Bennett, a marketing and business advisor, and your host for the Growth Plus Exit podcast, featuring middle market owners and experts talking about founding, growing, and exiting their businesses on their own terms. Past guests have included Lisa Mascola, the CEO of Voyatech, Allison Cummins, founder and CEO of Blue Outcomes, and Anisha Muthana, CEO of Pioneer Services and M&M Quality Grinding. This episode is brought to you by Newport LLC, a team of seasoned executives helping CEOs of privately held companies grow, de-risk, and exit their businesses successfully. Newport LLC is a winner of the prestigious Inc. magazine Power Partner Awards, recognizing elite B2B companies. To see all the winners, go to inc.com/Power Partner Awards. To learn more about Newport, visit us at newportllc.com, or of course, find us on LinkedIn. Before I introduce today's guest, I would like to thank my good friend Jennifer Lee, a venture partner with Cancer Fund and a very experienced board director in the life sciences industry, for introducing us. Julie Castro Abrams is the founder and CEO of How Women Lead, a national network of top executive women focused on advancing gender equity and increasing women's influence in business and philanthropy. A longtime entrepreneur and investor, Julie has built multiple successful ventures and helped channel hundreds of millions of dollars into women-led companies and social impact initiatives. Known for her ability to connect powerful leaders and mobilize capital for change, she has become a driving force in expanding opportunities for women at the highest level of business and leadership. There is so much I could say about Julie. I could spend the next hour. She has done some outstanding things in the business world, and hopefully we'll get to touch on a few of those. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Heather.
So let's talk about where did this all start? I know a lot about How Women Lead, and we're going to get into that later, but before that, you had worked on a couple of businesses and initiatives to help women. And so tell me a little bit about that.
Really, I come at this from a justice lens. In fact, my first real grown-up job was at the Chicago Foundation for Women the year that it started. So I've really been, when you start out in a space like this, you start really diving in and deciding what is your thesis for change, what's your theory for how to make a difference in the world eventually, and a strengths-based approach to poverty alleviation or really transformation is how I started to frame what I believe in. And it started at a music conservatory in Chicago called the Merit School of Music. And I know this sounds like it's really far off from this topic, but this is what I want you to think about. And this can be relevant for every single one of us at any life stage. You're known as the kid that comes from a challenging background, right? Let's say you grow up in public housing or whatever, and that could be the mantle that you carry around with you, and it can define how you show up and how people treat you. Well, all kids from all kinds of backgrounds will come to the Merit School of Music. So instead, here in this environment, you're the violinist, and it really trying on a new title and a new frame for who you are in the world. I really watched the transformation for kids in this case, right? But then in 2000, I was recruited to be the CEO of an organization that helped low-income women start businesses, but also did a number of different financing tools for those women. And I once again saw this transformational thing where you may, and people were coming from really tough situations. So you may have been a domestic violence survivor, but when you were here and as you started transforming all throughout your life, you were the CEO of your own company. And it was one of those things where I had this aha moment, like, look what the power is of self-definition for you and for all the people around you to start to treat you differently. And really, what does it look like when we take down all the barriers for someone to put on that new mantle, to become their own business owner, and what economic and social results can happen as a result? That really was what the magic was for me. And even though now today I mostly work with very successful professional folks, we are all constantly transforming. You, Heather, may go from, where you are today to say, I'm a public company board director. You might be on one already, as far as I know, but you can try on you can take on a new story for yourself, a new role, and you almost sit up straighter in some cases and really take on a new approach to how you want to show up in the world. And it is transformational. So a simple concept, but a thread that I've really seen have a huge impact on how I wanted to work on changing the world.
Absolutely. And so let's go down that thread. So you start so is that where you learned about the importance of investing in companies? Because I know now you're a venture capitalist. So talk about the evolution of your understanding from those years. So that was like over 10 years of really investing in all of these companies. How did that guide where you are as a venture capitalist today?
Yeah. I mean, it's inextricable. I mean, I started working with women and they had to come with an idea. It had to be their idea, which is important. And so they would come with I'd like to start, in this case, it could be a hair salon or even something that is more like a sole proprietor. I'm going to be a translator. We had people, I worked with over 6,000 women, right? And of course, in many cases, they needed financing. And here's the interesting thing. You need less than you think often, and there's way less, once you owe someone money, a venture capitalist or a bank, the clock starts ticking on when they get their money back. And the pressure to make sure that you create the multiple or whatever it's going to take to be able to not only pay your expenses, but pay back that loan or get a 10x return for that venture capitalist. So I'm always cautioning people, only take money when it is absolutely necessary. Because in many ways, you're stepping into a pressure cooker and a partnership at the same time, where someone else can actually have a say over. You could get, in fact, fired from your own company if you're not meeting, whatever that agreement and structure that you put into place. So money can be an extreme, amplifier, can help you grow. It can be exactly what you need, but you need to understand the risk and the responsibility of taking on whether it's debt or equity. It has a big ripple effect on how your life moves forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, as a venture capitalist, when you're looking at founders, because I know you wear so many hats, so we'll get to you as a founder later. But for right now, as a venture capitalist, what are you looking for? What are those like key, shiny objects when you're meeting an entrepreneur or someone to invest in while they're pitching to you that you're like, oh, this one, yeah, this is worth investing in? What are you looking for?
Well, anybody who's looked at, what are the qualities of a great founder? Grit is the first thing that you see. And I just want to reinforce that. Right now, today, as you and I are having this interview, the world feels like it is like completely unstable. And there, from any moment, from one to the next, is BlackRock going to stop actually distributing their funds to people who've invested in certain products at BlackRock? I mean, it is that serious, right? So you need to understand that this founder is not going to give up when the time's tough. that they're someone who is going to find alternative ways to solve a problem. So if you think about like, okay, then how do I discern that? Well, past behavior and life experience has a huge impact on that. Kind of one of the easiest things you can look at is it has this person had to it's shown a history of risk taking or change or entrepreneurial behavior. And you know who's the number one person? You mentioned a friend that you and I both have, Jennifer Lee, someone I admire greatly. She's an immigrant, right? Immigrants, by definition, if you came to this country, you had to learn, you had to pivot, you had to create something from scratch. It's risk-taking behavior. There's so many things that you can literally just look at someone from their life experience and say, they've already shown that they have this kind of behavior. And when I worked with over 6,000 women, we had a statistician on staff, and we could look at trends and behaviors and do analyses that told you what are the influences of the outcomes, right? And immigrants were frankly far more successful in building income and assets and growth over time. And I think it's because of, by definition, you already weeded out the scaredy cats, the people who were more comfy following the old brick road and staying home. They're the ones who are who are still the accountant in their hometown. But I think that's one of the biggest things. And certainly, in venture, the structure of a venture firm is you raise money from other people and you're investing that money. And there's a fee structure on top of that. So when you are making investments, you need to see a 10 times return in order to be able to have a successful outcome for your firm as a venture capital firm, right? So I need to be able to pick companies that are going to have a huge hockey stick of growth. If they only grow to 2 times their size, I might not even get my money back. If they grow to 5 times what they were when I first met them, I might get 2 times my money back, which will pay my expenses and a tiny bit of profit for people. But that's not what people expect with venture capital, right? And so when I'm looking at a company, what is that game-changing technology that's going to make this a huge growth curve? What is is this a blue ocean opportunity, like a new market that I know is going to be hot? And it's going to be adopted, and they're going to be able to be the leader in this space because competition, that red sea of competition, that actually can really reduce your market share and your ability to have hockey stick growth. So just as a venture capitalist, you have a different lens in which you're looking at things. So when I'm talking to someone who's trying to determine whether or not they went venture funding, most of the time my response is if it's not obvious, you probably should avoid it. You can get a loan from a customer, that someone who wants you to implement something. You can say to them, hey, give me a loan for half of what the product delivery cost is going to be so I can buy the raw materials. Like there's a lot of ways you can finance your growth that doesn't require you to get into a situation where venture capital is looking for you to sell the company in 5 years. That's a pressure cooker right there.
So talking about that process, let's get super basic because I know you are so dedicated to educating, especially women, about this process. Go through what are the steps for a business owner to approach venture capital from your perspective? Like what are those steps and what happens in that process?
Yeah. Well, it actually depends on your life stage of your company. So first and foremost, if you have an idea and you're going to build a prototype, you need to go seek, generally it's friends and family money first, or an angel investor, someone who'll put in a small amount of money, understanding that they're taking a huge bet on you. Once you've exhausted or gone through those routes, you really want to find somebody first and foremost who invests in your industry and your stage. You have to research that first. If you come to me and all I do is later stage funding, and you come pitch me for early stage funding, you haven't done your homework, and it's not going to make you look good. And even if it's a long-term relationship business and I'm hunting for great people, you need to at least have done your homework. So find the right VC firm. Here's some other things. Make sure they actually have liquidity today. Make sure they have money to actually invest. Unfortunately, the market environment is constricting capital in all industries, and one impacts the other. So public markets are impacting private market liquidity today. And that has a big impact on whether or not people are going to be able to invest in you or not. And sometimes they're not upfront about that, not because they're necessarily bad actors, but you just want to ask, are you deploying, and when is the last time that you made an investment? I think that's a great question to ask people. And so let's say that you've done that homework and you see that this is a good institutional potential pitch for you. Then you have work to do. There's something called a data room that you really need to be ready to share with someone. Now, when you're just starting in your company, I'm going to expect you have a lot less developed already in terms of forecasts and understand, like a financial forecast that shows hockey stick growth. You also are going to need to have all of your legal documents in order. A venture firm is going to look for you generally to be a qualified small business, which means it has less tax implications, or has tax implications, less tax for me as a venture capitalist. So you need to have a legal structure that's right for VC. There's a number of things you just need to have in the foundation. And I need to be able to see the bios of your advisors and your team and what's your org structure. You're going to need to be ready to do a product demo for me. So that needs to be something you need to be ready for. I need to be able to see if you're a little later stage, especially, let's say so pre-seed, I have an idea, I need to build my prototype. Seed, I have the prototype, I need to test the market and make sure people will buy it. Then once I've tested the market, I have some customers and that maybe even starting to repeat, that's when I considered Series A investing, okay? You're really ready for growth money that's going to, now that you know who your customer is and what your product is, and it's mature enough, it's just ready to sell. That's sort of a different cycle, right? If I'm looking at a Series A investment, I actually can look at and need to see what is the track record of who your clients are, who's on your prospective client list, how long does it take you to close a client? What is your average contract value? Has it grown over time? What is your cost to acquire customers? Can I see you have a strategy for reducing customer acquisition cost over time? These are all the things in a little bit, the minute you can answer those questions, you need to be ready for that, because the more I can see the trends and how I'm going to be evaluating this company over time and whether or not I agree that there's that it's the right balance of all of those indicators, right? That all becomes a really important part of the story. The more organized and ready to answer all those questions you are, the more confidence I have in you as a leader, because it clearly shows you've done your homework and you know what to do. So it's not rocket science, but it is a decent amount of work. And you can clearly use Google or AI to say, what should I have in my data room at this life stage of this type of a company? And don't make me have to ask for it, have it ready to go. It'll make all of our lives easier. And some people will get frustrated. They'll be like, I thought you'd have a decision for me on this investment in, 4 weeks. And it's like, well, I would have if you would have had all your materials ready. But if I have to keep asking you, if I can't find reference information, if I don't have a quick response from you, not only does it take me longer, which is hard on my team, and so it costs me, but it also erodes my confidence in you, that over time, when I ask for a quarterly report, that I'm going to get what I need from you. So
Absolutely. That was brilliant, Julie. Thank you so much. I've worked with companies and advised companies all through every one of those processes that you've talked about, and uh, there at no stage do you need to arrive unprepared for everything. I mean, that's really and to your point, that's something where AI can step in. Like, what are the
Yeah,
questions I'm going to get asked? There's no reason not to use that ahead of time,
exactly.
and to really. And one thing I find founders don't take advantage of is their advisors enough.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
tend to think I'm doing this on my own. I'm like, no, no, you have an advisory board for a reason. Please reach out to them. Have them go over the quarterly numbers with you. Have them talk about forecasting with you. Really use that board to your advantage because that's what they're there for, is to help you get ready for
yeah.
that
I
next
love that you
round.
said that. Practice your pitch with them. Tell them, like, really run me through the ringer.
Mhm. Yep,
You'd rather have them do it with you because they're friendly and they're not holding the purse strings. So
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, this is the good news though. We're talking about women.
Mhm.
Women are more prepared. They have to be because they're less likely to get funding. So I find that most of the time the women are pretty darn prepared. Here's another interesting thing, if I can talk about gender for a minute. There's a lot of studies that show this. Men are in your life, you've experienced this, we all have. Men are hired, promoted, and invested in for their potential. Oh, this guy, he could, I believe in him. I really think that this can be a big result, and that he's the guy to do it. Right? We've all heard that. Women in our culture is not genetic. Women in our culture are hired, promoted, and invested in for what we've already accomplished. Okay. That's why, we blame women for this, but it's cultural. That's why women don't apply for a job unless they have most of the criteria, because in reality, people literally are not going to, we're not going to be successful. They won't hire us just for our potential. Culturally, and that's the norm. Maybe there's an exception, and good for you if there is one for you. But if you're seeking venture funding, one of the things you need to really be aware of is that bias in the system, where the men are asked what we call promotion questions. Hey, Joe, how big can this be? Do you think this could be $1 billion exit? How fast? What would it take for this to become a huge exit? Okay. So that is what the guys get. What the women get is what we call risk management or prevention questions. So the exact same, you can literally, they've done these studies where it's like exact same numbers, same company, same solution, just a man and a woman. And so you need to be ready to pivot the conversation to, and it's a lot of, this is not fair, but it's just the reality. You need to pivot the conversation to promotion. How big is this going to be? And you can just say, you can find that in my data room. I really want us to focus right now on how big this can be. I want you to understand all the indicators of why this is where this market's going. And that's PR training 101, actually. So if you've ever been trained to talk to someone like Heather, when they ask you a question you don't want to answer, you're not prepared to answer, you answer the question you want to answer. That's PR training 101. And I would say I would do that, practice doing that with a venture interview. Yes, you have to be ready with the answers. Make those prevention question answers milk and that's apple pie. That's something that's basic, but let's actually give them the answer we want them to hear.
That is such a great point, Julie. I work with a lot of executives coaching on careers and personal branding, especially when I'm brought in as an advisor. And I do never underestimate the value of good media training.
Oh yeah.
It's so important, even for day-to-day meetings, to understand how to respond to questions in a way that conveys authority and shows what you really know and what you've really done. So
Exactly.
important.
Well, and I don't know. I'm sure everybody's kind of generally heard this, but competence and warmth combined, that competence and authenticity as a combo, that makes people trust you and will take you miles. So you should lock down competence. That's easy. But then what you need to do is not puff yourself up and overdo it in a way that makes you not authentic. Like there's got to be a nice balance between confidence and also, someone said this to me once when I was raising money. They were like, "Oh, you're great because the first thing you did was ask me what I'm looking for. You interviewed me first before you started just barfing out your whole story, right?" And I think for everybody listening, like when you go sit down with a venture capitalist, you can say, real quick before I share with you what my story is, what I understand is you invest in the following ways in this, that, and the other. Is that correct? And should I focus on X, Y, and Z in the conversation today? Just, it's not aggressive controlling of the conversation, but you should not just showing up and be so scared and freaked out that you just like jump into your story without understanding your audience. Sometimes you'll realize in the first 2 minutes, oh, this is not a fit. Or, somehow that's old information on their website. Or, you might as well not waste your time and spend an hour doing your pitch. If it's not worth everybody's time. So good to control the conversation and interview them a tiny bit in the beginning as well.
I love that. That great advice. Really great advice. Okay, so we've talked about you as a venture capitalist and your viewpoint, and you've given us such a great perspective on that. Let's talk about you as a founder, specifically for How Women Lead. Yeah. What's the origin story behind that? Because I know it's quite a movement now, and I want to understand, where did that start and how how you got it going.
It's a huge movement now, but like a lot of big movements and big things, it started by accident around the kitchen table. So I had run this type of a bank, right, and done this work, and it was amazing, but it was hard. And for those of you who were around in 2008 and 2009, there was a crisis in the banking market. And so it was not easy for me. So there came a point where I was like, okay, 12 years, did my part. I am no longer running anything ever again. I was like, I'm going to consult and do, I was just going to, to do a portfolio life and chill a little bit. Well, after about 18 months, someone had written a book on the neuroscience of teams. And she's like, I'd love to get this in front of some corporate women. I was like, it's a great book. I'll call some people I could, I haven't seen for a while anyway. Let me just organize people for a lunch. What was really interesting is, I think I invited 75 people because, if you invite 75, 10 will come, right? If, especially if you don't give people a lot of notice and it's lunchtime, everybody's busy. 70 people came. It was nutty. I was like, wait, why is everybody here? And people, and I also kind of looked around the room and everyone was aghast. They were like, oh my God, the best people. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess like I'm 45. My friends are running the world now. Like it was sort of one of those moments where you're like, oh yeah, I see. Like a lot of powerful people I know. I really was not, it was all accidental. In some way, LinkedIn had just really come out. This was like 2013 maybe. And I had a LinkedIn, but I wasn't really using it. I didn't really know much about it yet. And someone was like, I'm putting a LinkedIn group together. You have the best network. And then nobody would leave. And they were like, you got to do this again. I'll bring some friends. We need to be around other senior women. And I was like, well, and then the restaurant's like, you're going to have to pay another $1,000 if your people won't leave. So I was like, all right, well, fine, I'll do another thing because I'm not paying this restaurant another $1,000 for you people won't leave. And it was really magic. And then I started saying, well, I'd buy out a bar and people would fill it up and they would ask me to do it again. After a while, it was like, you're paying for your own cocktails. So let me make this a little more structured. And I started interrogating why. Why were people so hungry to be together? And I would ask people questions. They would say, well, in every room, I'm either the only woman in the room, or I'm just mentoring everybody else. I'm never in a room with other senior women like me who get it. And this is the reality. When you've been the only woman in the room and you've been the ceiling breaker and you've been, and you're in your mid 40s to mid 50s and up, you really have been alone and have not been in environments where people really get you and you can that's fuel for you. It's both understanding where you feel seen and known, but you also can grow because they figured out stuff you haven't yet figured out, right? And I realized a lot of this is life stage stuff. It's called middlescence, and that was the magic, Heather, of what I built. And I think for a lot of us, when you find, oh, there's a great need here, it's just like any other startup. Wow, this is something that everybody's leaning into. I realized women in that middlescence life stage, they are really pivoting from I've built my career, I built my family, I built my homestead. I now can discern and make different decisions. And all of a sudden, and you know this, Heather, because we've had lunch with some people who are in this space, people are like, oh, I'm not working for those people anymore. That the cost is too high, the moral cost, the whatever cost. I am only going to work with people who fit this definition. They're positive, they're on the growth curve, whatever it is, people who will be respectful to you, people who align with your morals and values. This actually becomes a clarion call for us. I will not do something that's against my moral and values code once I'm at this life stage. I don't need to, and I refuse to do it. And you start to really realize, like, I have got to make a difference in this world at this point. And my life force is precious and my resources. So where am I investing my money? Am I just blindly giving it to the Schwab or Fidelity, or handing it over to some guy? And someone said to me once, they were like, look under the hood about, and see where your mutual funds are invested. And it was very painful. And there was a lot of shame when I realized I was basically accidentally investing in things that are completely against my moral values, and things that I volunteered and donated to solve for. I was, contributing to it as an investor. So there's an interesting moment in that life stage where you're like, oh, I got to align all these things. And it's a big opportunity for anybody who's in, who has a solution or a resource for people. And you were talking about people's brands before. A lot of people reset their brand in that moment in life. They're like, okay, I want to be known as the person who, it might be like for a career goal, you might be like, oh, I want to be known for my cybersecurity expertise because I want to be consulting in this space. I want to be known for my governance expertise because I want to be chosen to and invited to be on some corporate boards. Or I want to be known as the person who's the climate solution person because I want to invest in climate solutions. So, really saying, okay, who do I want? What do I want people to say about me when I'm not in the room? Who do I want? What do I want the inbound energy to look like? And then you just start architecting that, making sure, whether it's just my LinkedIn needs to be aligned with that messaging, or I need to be doing a podcast or doing writing articles that align with that so people can find me and what my voice is, all important parts of what's happening in this life stage. So really my organization started understanding this life stage and then combining that with thinking about, okay, well, if we all want to make a difference, and Heather, I know you care deeply about women's leadership and you understand the value of it, right? How do we change the environment so it's easier for women to lead, and women are invited into more influential rooms? Well, someone wrote a book called The Forces for Good, and it's kind of a good Bible for me on change making. So women on corporate boards, when I started this organization called How Women Lead Now, when I started this, only 10% of one out of every boardroom, for the most part, was a woman in the public board space. Well, today it's 34%. We are 3 and 4 women on every board, public board. And why is that important? Well, one, once you're at that space, those women are going to get more women on the board. There's a critical mass there. It actually is ultimately ends up that 30% is protective for a company. It disrupts groupthink. When you're the only person in the room, people don't really listen to you. Even when there's 2 people, you may at least have somebody to look across the table at when you know that the wrong thing is happening. But once you have 3 people or 30%, it's kind of the magic tipping point for you to have a power base, and it disrupts groupthink. You stop having frankly, the groupthink, which is so dangerous in corporate boardrooms and has caused huge disasters. So it's protective for companies, but it's also great for women. So the way we did it is we passed a law. So if you work on policy and systems change, so you get rid of barriers and you inspire with a carrot or a stick. If you do movement building, which is like me being on this podcast, I want every woman listening to this to put going on a board at some point in time on your agenda, and make sure that you start to understand and not understand you're probably ready before you think you might be. Really get in and interrogating what do I need and what it would be the right type of board for me. And then when you train people, you educate them, you give them the tools, and then you have board opportunities. We place women on boards in our organization. If you can work across that whole spectrum, it really matters. It can move the market. And that's how we move from 10% to 34%, by working on all of those levers for change. So Heather, I'm a venture capitalist. Last year, 2025, literally there was only 1.2% of all venture funding went to companies founded by women. So I am now on a mission to do the policy change, movement building, all of those pieces to move that so we're more in line with what would make sense. 45% of all businesses are started by women, and 1% of venture funding goes to companies founded by women. Women return 34% more for their investors. Like there's there's dissonance happening cognitively when those numbers are out there.
Yeah, and it is interesting if you look at the numbers on either women-owned businesses and how they perform in terms of return on investment, or to look at boards that do have women on them. With that level of diversity, those companies tend to be more profitable, and it's just clear.
Heather,
it's just clear data. Yeah. So it's really interesting to see why.
Yeah, product recalls happen 3 times faster because it disrupts groupthink. Mm-hmm. And if you are disappointed in the behavior, the influence, the undue influence, and the bad behavior of the corporate leaders in our country today, I am very disappointed, I have to tell you. A little bit of groupthink disruption would be helpful right now. If we could get 34% of the public companies run by women as the CEO, to me, that would change some of this behavior, because you'd have more competition and people couldn't continue to have these beliefs and behaviors that we're seeing that are so negative.
Yeah. And I think it's important too to look at everything we've talked about, how you started working with entrepreneurs, and you started actually with Merit School, and how that showed you how a person can redefine themselves. I'm very, very much love the Merit School of Music. They work very closely with the Foundation for Hearing and Speech Resources, which I'm on the board for and have been working with for over 8 years now. But Merit does amazing things. But you talked about that first step, which is being able to redefine who you are, and not being controlled or contained by your original identity, and being able to take that step to find a new identity. And then, taking that one step further when you talk about how women lead and why that resonated, because at that stage, you want to redefine not just who you are, but what work you're going to do and who you're going to work with and how you're going to do that. And then that leads to, the ultimate goal is, what impact are you going to make? What's your purpose in this world? And how are you going to be able to do that? So I love that you see the through line in your work. It's so purposeful, starting at the beginning and being able to help people develop. And it is growing businesses, but I think in a way, a lot of the work you do is growing people.
Absolutely. And, understanding human behavior and what influences and inspires us and motivates us is frankly one of the most important things you can do as a leader in anything that you're doing. As somebody once said to me, stop talking to me about human behavior. And I was like, I think there's anything else more important at the core. Numbers are numbers, but humans influence, their behavior and what makes them either have grit and work harder or give up easily. Those are massive, massive impact on the all of the things that we care about.
Exactly, exactly. So we've talked about how women lead. You've briefly mentioned a little bit about how women invest. And then talk a little bit more about how women invest and how women give.
Yeah. Well, I think for all of us to really be thinking about, when you're in my life stage, our life stage, if I can say, over 40, you really start to think, all right, I have some resources. What am and I have goals. How am I going to use my resources to meet the goals that I have? And one of those goals can be, financial safety and independence. You want to be able to build or do something. But other parts of your life I want to be able to be in the rooms where important things are happening, and it could be philanthropic, and it could be corporate, and it could just be innovation economy, right? Money and how you're managing and leveraging your money has an impact on all of those things. And that honestly, in this life stage, and when I think about 10 to 20 years from now, I want to have enough resources that I can donate to the things that are important to me, that I can be on those nonprofit boards and be in community with people, making the change I want to see in the world. I also want to be able to be part of the innovation economy. I want to be in the know. I want to be part of change and making the world a better place in the corporate world as well, innovation side of things. And my money can be leveraged in a lot of ways to do that. So let me give you an example of how I can do all of that in one work stream, one financial stream. So I know I want to donate when 20 years from now. It is better for me to put money aside today in a tax deductible vehicle called a donor advised fund or another structure like that, because if I am taxed today on money, I might as well put some money aside now for my philanthropy in the future. Well, I want to be able to donate that money in 10 to 20 years. Well, what am I doing with the actual assets today? I can direct that money that is already, I got a tax deduction, any income off of that money and the core assets all have to go to philanthropy or get to go to philanthropy, right? So I can invest that money in a venture fund. I could invest that money in a startup through it has to be impact focused. And there's some tools like CataCap is something that's relatively new out of impact assets. There's a couple others like that. So I could actually use the money today to both invest in something that I think is really important in the world. And then I can get involved. I can go on the board of that company, or I can get involved in that venture firm because I have assets to invest. When that money grows and we have returns, now I have more money to donate. So I can donate that money. I can actually go on a board and say, here's my annual $10,000 donation with that money. Like there's all kinds of, so I've used this money over and over and over again by the time I get to 10 to 20 years from now. I've leveraged it for investments and gotten maybe some access and opportunity along the way and did things that were important to me and meaningful. And then once the money becomes available for philanthropy, I could just donate it, or I can also donate that with some strings. Like I want my name on a building, or I'm, that's part of my board contribution.
I love that. And really that's the type of strategic thinking that we all need to be thinking about when it comes to our careers and what we're investing in is not just now, but how it can compound itself, not just through natural compounding, but through targeted actions and impact by what we can do ourselves throughout. Julie, I could keep asking you questions all day. There's so much we could talk about. I do have one last question. So I know we've talked, is there anything you're working on next that's exciting that you want to share about right now?
Well, a couple of things that are interesting in the venture space. There's a law that we're trying to get through. It's gotten through the House that democratizes investing in venture funds. So for a lot of people listening, my guess is you're new to venture like I was 10 years ago. And you think, well, I don't have enough money to do that. Well, what if I told you that just for $6,250, that could be your minimum investment amount every year for 4 years, and you'd have a $25,000 investment stake in a venture fund, in a group of investments? That actually is accessible. So I want to make sure that our legal and financial structures allow for democratization, where a lot of us can participate and not have it be $1 million minimum, which is outside of the reach of almost all of us. And so that's one thing. Both the law and other systems and structural things that are, right now might be barriers. I want to make sure that there's no barriers. And do movement building. I want you, everyone listening, and all 10 of your friends to know that you could potentially invest in venture capital. So I want you to spread the word. And what you can do is you can say, I care about climate. I'll invest in a climate-focused venture fund. I care about health. I can invest in a healthcare focused, or a fund run by a Latina focusing on LATAM opportunities, huge financial growth opportunities in the Latino market in the United States, if you don't know that. So I'm trying to make sure that we are disrupting and making sure that we can smooth the way. One other part of what we're doing, I didn't really touch on the giving too much, but if you are concerned about what's going on in the world, but you can't do it full time, and you want to start to support some of the leaders who are really sacrificing and putting their neck out to solve social issues, healthcare issues, poverty alleviation. Our organization has a fellows program for people running social impact organizations. So think reproductive rights, think voter rights, all kinds of problems we're all trying to solve. You could give an hour a month of your time as an advisor. And this might be a good part of your training to ultimately get on a corporate board because you're advising a CEO. So there's a lot of ways you can assert leadership and engage in things that have multiple bottom lines. They're good for your career, and they're good for they're good for the world, and make you feel like you're making a difference. So,
absolutely. Absolutely, Julie. This has been amazing. I want to direct people to your website, howwomenlead.com, and of course, to reach out to you through LinkedIn. I've been talking with Julie Castro Abrams. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey, your mission. I know that you've offered so much, and our audience is going to get a lot out of this episode. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Heather. It's great to be here. Thank you for creating this container.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, sponsored by Newport, a unique national business advisory firm. If you enjoyed this show, be sure to share, like, and subscribe for future episodes.